Fantastic.
Are they one? Are they doing a countdown?
It doesn't appear to be. I guess we're just going live. It's 11 o'clock. Good
Okay.
morning, everyone watching.
I am just a puppet at their disposal.
This is Juanita Coulson, who's being helped by me.
My name is Tom Smith. I don't know if you can see me because they told me there'd be a split screen, and still we have the hold card, but that's fine.
Yeah, from our point of view, we have the old card as well.
And that's also Emily Coulson right there with
Yep.
Juanita.
Yeah.
And we are here basically to talk about the history of Filk, and there is a lot of it. And Juanita can start because she was living through most of it.
Okay. Well, I went to the Chicago Worldcon in 1952 at the Morrison in, well, we called it the Hotel Strange. And they had a masquerade, sort of. I think there were 3 costumes. There was a babe wearing a leotard and a dime store space blaster, and a guy running around in, I guess, what was supposed to be a zombie outfit, and one guy who had a set of mechanics fatigues with a patch that said Riesling, and put a handkerchief over his eyes and was trying to play The Green Hills of Earth.
Oh,
Well, at the time, I said, I think I could do better. But there wasn't anybody else that I knew who was writing music at that time of folk nature. So I began doing some from Heinlein's, Green Hills of Earth and Bradbury, Grand Canal. Bradbury had some nice stuff and some original stuff. And you got to realize at that time there were 4 conventions.
ooh, the big screen.
In
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
In the 50s, there were 4 conventions a year. There was MidwestCon in Cincinnati area. Well, originally, it was in the middle of Ohio at Bell Fountain. That did not work out too well for very personal reasons and very fanish reasons, I'll put it that way. So we ended up in a strange, lengthy hotel in the Cincy area. And I was writing filky stuff, and they had one meeting room, and they didn't want anybody cutting into the conversation and drinking. But we also found out fairly early that there was a concrete lined, low ceilinged basement that ran through the extent of all of the Holiday Inn units. And it had wonderful acoustics. So I ended up in there with a fellow named Les Gerber and a gentleman who is no longer with us. And we each had a repertoire of 3 songs. And we did the round that you do now in Filk. And then we repeated because that's all there was.
That's all you had.
Yeah. And at the same time that this was going on, there were fans sort of springing off what was going to become the Society for Creative Anachronism on the West Coast, and some fans on the East Coast. But back then, you didn't fly. It was expensive. You communicated in fanzines and by mail. Lots
and
of
by
mail.
and
Lots
by
and
fanzines, we mean the mimeograph suckers.
Yeah, well, I got a mimeograph from Sears for all of $30 when I was in college, and my BFF, Bev, then Amers, helped me run off from the college business department mimeograph our little announcement of our club. Well, my mother was afraid we were going to get expelled for using equipment we shouldn't, so she bought me a mimeograph. And I started printing. first announcements, and then little lyrics, I'll put it that way. And we kind of grew like a fungus from there. And eventually you started stumbling onto other people who also loved to write or set to music. Randall Garrett used to write a lot of long, usually funny verses about other authors' work. And a good friend of mine was setting those to music. And one of them was about Asimov's robot series. And eventually there were more cons. And then we ended up with St. Louis. I don't remember the date, but it was really strange. The hotel, a friend later told us the hotel wasn't mad about us being science fiction fans. It just didn't like people coming in and messing up their hotel.
Well then.
In 70, in the Midwest, thanks to Shambanicon especially, a whole bunch of people like Michael Longcore and who we were referring to earlier, the disgusting, or whatever he wanted to call himself at the time, which was Bob Aspirin, and they were largely SCA people.
Yeah.
But we all got together and shared. And a lovely, unfortunately he's not with us anymore, fellow from Chicago named Hal Frank, who at some point discovered there had been very many attempts to set Heinlein's Green Hills of Earth to music. I've done it, lots and lots of people. He figured out that it scanned to the Canadian folk singers, Stan Rogers, rolling down to Old Maui. And at the time, everybody had a Stan Rogers record.
Yeah.
And he started singing it with this wonderful bass baritone. And by the chorus, 50 voices joined him. It became a true anthem because everybody knew the lyrics and everybody knew the song. And I consider that sort of a landmark in the growth of Filk. If this is a participation, these are concerts. But we didn't have enough people early on to set aside what you and I are doing now and just have one program item for a concert or tell us what it was like in the Dark Ages, which is what I'm doing a lot of.
Pretty much.
And at about 70, the term Filk was really taking hold. I once had a mundane woman, we had a sign that said Filk Room, and she said, "Aren't you ashamed to be associated with that?" And I realized some mundanes and muggles were going to have a little problem with the word. Not that that stopped anything. And your turn.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it still every once in a while pops up in actual popular culture, like it ended up in an episode of Seinfeld. I recall a couple years ago they had some questions about it on Wait, Don't Tell Me. It's like FILK just freaks people out. It's like, what the heck is it? I came in it from an obviously different point of view because I was not a regular con attendee when I first encountered it. I first encountered it actually at WindyCon 1979, my very first science fiction convention. And that one has a different story associated with it that I love telling, because my mentor at the time was Lee Darrow. Okay. Lee lived in Ann Arbor at the time. He moved back later to Oak Park. But he was doing a magic show at that convention. And, so imagine basically 5 of us piled into the car, leaving Ann Arbor at about noon on Friday, hitting Chicago on Friday at rush hour, going up the Skyway.
Oh,
Empty.
you poor baby.
No. Empty. Like 12 cars total. And everybody is like, "Lee, I thought you said this is going to be crowded." And Lee is gaping like a fish. Okay. And what happened was we turned on the radio and found out that the Pope was at Wrigley Field. By the time he was done, we were all the way through to Arlington Heights. So my first encounter with Chicago was, so what's the big deal? You know, then we had to drive back on Sunday. That was much more like it. But also at that convention, besides having a lot of fun and meeting a couple of pretty girls and stuff, I also had my first encounter with Filk, which, as I recall, was basically you and Bob Aspirin at one end of a large room with the open gaming at the other end of the large room, which shows you how much high regard fandom had for both at the time.
Yes.
And,
we're the red-haired stepchildren, so.
But it was still a lot of fun. I didn't start regularly going to conventions until late '84, early '85. And my mom was a nightclub singer. My dad was a dancer. I met several celebrities when I was a kid. I had 3 drum lessons in my house from Buddy Rich. Okay. I had piano lessons. I had organ lessons. I had tap dancing lessons. I had drum lessons. I had accordion lessons. I still have my dad's accordion. Nothing took. Nothing took. I wanted to learn trumpet because I was a big fan of Louis Armstrong, but they said, no, that'll hurt your face. And so, oh, geez.
Yeah.
So
I can't do I found that out. So
yeah, that's fine.
There we go.
There we go. But and I ended up getting a guitar from a not a remainder shop here in Ann Arbor, and a couple of Mel Bay books from one of the local bookstores, and effectively taught myself whatever I know about guitaring, and started filking in spring of '85, and you know, by spring of '88, you know, nobody had killed me, so I figured I was doing okay. There were a couple things along the way in there, but I was basically trying to be the clown prince of Filk at the time, because a lot of the Filk, okay, there was some stuff that was amusing. There were even a couple things that were riotously funny, like Cliff Flint had Unreality Warp at that point. But yeah, I was going to say, but he also had things like Ian the Grim, and it was mostly a bunch of people with guitars doing slow ballads, and frankly, it was yeah. Come on, pick up the pace, anything. So so that's mostly why I concentrated on funny stuff. I figured if everybody was laughing, they wouldn't kill me for my ineptitude, and and you know, thankfully it mostly worked. I didn't get killed very much.
In the 50s, when first signed that other people were doing what we were doing, and we would get together at one of the rare conventions.
Mm-hmm.
I had been keyboard pretty strictly, and okay, pianos and keyboards were portable in the 50s. And the were bands were incredibly expensive, so
yeah.
I got a K student guitar from Sears Roebuck.
Sears again.
And it had the only half to 2/3 of a bridge. Well, I have tiny hands. And I got this teacher, Guckets, teach yourself how to play guitar. And this is an A, this is an A minor, this is an E, this is an E minor, this is a D. And I turned the page and it said, this is F. And I looked at it and I said, not happening.
The bane of beginning guitarists everywhere.
I could manage F, no. But it served me well, so I started sort of making up chords. Oh, that sounds good. I like that, whatever it is. I have no idea what I'm playing. Eventually, as more professional people like Jack McGetty and trained people came in and said, oh, you're playing a F minor super whatever you say. I found another way to play it with 2 fingers. That I could do. And at one of the Midwest cons a little later, we had a wonderful singer named Sandy Curran. And I never saw a man get through a bottle so fast, sort of like Cat Ballou. And he was carrying around a guitar. It was a 6-string guitar. Unfortunately, it only had 4 strings. So he wanted to borrow mine. Well, fortunately, his hand wrapped entirely around the fretboard. He said, I can't play this thing, and handed it back. I say fortunately because he was found next morning floating around in the pool with his guitar as the float.
Oh boy.
Supporting him. And my poor little Kay was, and eventually my mother and my best friends said, get rid of that thing. Go to Joe's familiar record store, get yourself a real guitar. And that's when I tried out a whole bunch of classics and got to the Hauser and said, ooh, I like this one. And I used the Hauser for a very long time. And then Michael Longcore, sometime in the 70s or 80s, gifted me with a guitar he and his buddies had found while demolishing a barn or something. He'd taken it to his luthier. It was an Egmont. The other, it's kind of knocked about, but has a wonderful deep tone, which matched beautifully. And I figured out at this point I had learned about dadgad. So I only needed 2 fingers for 99% of the chords. And I tuned it to dadgad and have used it ever since. Maybe I can still play that.
I should look
you
into
do
that.
what you did. You can. You keep wanting to join in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're an old crock, and you know, I'm still loud, but whether any of the other roots. But I enjoy listening tremendously, and as you know, I'm not above joining in on a few hamster squeaks or.
Oh, yes. I love them. I love them. I did the song yesterday, and I was thinking, I miss Juanita being here. Squeak.
King Kong hamster.
I'm sorry?
That's King Kong hamster.
The first major Filk that I remember being a part of, okay, because there were, several different, things along the way, but in at Marcon 86, there were 2 distinct Filk things that I had a great time with. Number one, they had some one-shots on Saturday afternoon before dinner. And I had actually gone off, I had signed up for it, but I'd gone off to have dinner across the street with a friend, came back, found out that I'd missed my spot, and I'd been pushed to the very last time slot of the program. Okay. And it turned out that the people just before me were Cliff Flint, and Mary Ellen Wessels, and Bill Roper, and they were doing Cliff's song "Dream All Day."
Oh yes,
yeah, whatever it's called. Beautiful, lovely, haunting song. Everybody's singing along with it. The room is ringing with the harmonies. Oh my God, so beautiful. And then I go on.
Kick over the card table.
My song is "Crystal Gale Killed Frank Herbert," which nobody had heard at that point. and for those of you who don't know it, it's a song about Dune, to the tune of "Don't I Make My Brown Eyes Blue." And just before I got to that refrain, like 2/3 of the audience go, "Oh no!" seeing what was coming, and I was hooked. It was great.
I remember us trying to record certain things at our farmhouse, and Brenda suggesting maybe you want to do this sort of thing. And whether anything, we knew nothing about no recording, Miss.
Knew nothing about anything. I remember it was so much fun. I remember Barry's hands actually bleeding from all the guitar work he was doing. It was I don't know where those tapes are, if they exist anywhere. If they do, they're likely in a box in the shed someplace. I swear I don't know. If I could find them, I could sell them for gold.
Well, I started giving a lot of Buck had an Ampex recorder.
Yeah.
It looked about the size of a laptop keyboard, And
Mhm.
people kept saying, "What kind of cassettes does it take?" And he says, "Ordinary ones." It just had tremendous fidelity. He would set it up at the Shambana Marathon Filks and
Mhm.
record everything.
Yeah.
And he could sit in and duck out to schmooze with friends and come back and got everything and labeled them all.
Mhm.
I gave those to Harold's archive. So presumably somebody has transferred them
Or is in the process of
and
doing
doing
so.
something with them because they're historic.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You had
That would be some
everybody,
great stuff.
including people who are no longer with us, and like Bill Marichello.
I was just
First thing
that
after, first person I
you
thought it was Bill
remember
Marcello.
Bill Marcello.
This
Oh.
was 10 years after. It was in Wapakoneta, Ohio, at a Holiday Inn, because Wapakoneta, Ohio, was Neil Armstrong's birthplace.
And they still have
And
the
this
space
was
museum
a
down there.
huge festival. And at one point, a mundane in the hotel complained that we were too noisy. And he wanted the hotel manager to throw us all out. There were quite a few of us and only one of him. So basically, and it came around the next day and says, "I can't stand it. Get me. You offered to put me in another hotel." I said, "This is the day of the anniversary. Everybody's booked. There are no rooms at the inn." So we had the whole hotel, and I was the only guitar. And they really didn't have a program. It was just celebrating the fact Kelly was there. And we had a little bitty art show and just people having a good time.
Mhm.
And they all gathered the con suite. Entertain us. And I had the Hauser and I started, and some of them were sing-alongs, but a lot of them I had to drag out of the, let me see, in the book, sort of thing. And my fingers are starting to bleed. A little man with 2 hands full of all kinds of instruments walked in.
Bill
Jim,
of many axes.
and nobody had seen him before, and I just saw other instruments. And I said, "Oh, a musician." Well, it turned out to be Bill Marichello. And
Mhm.
his stunt, as many of us later found out, was to play something jaw-dropping. And more and more and more, I said, "No, I want to hear from you. Your turn." Okay, that was our usual pattern, but not when you had somebody of that capability. But he
Yeah.
was always that way. There was the first attempt to record Filk was in Chicago. Not sure of the date, 72, 82, something like that. And Margaret Middleton had set it all up and we all assembled. That's where I did the infamous stunt that was set up by Passavoy. It was the first time any of us are recorded in most cases. So one of the things they would ask for was a sound check. Well, I'd seen this in movies and so forth. Check, 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 1, 2, 3. And then Passavoy said, "Do herbs and simples." Well, this is a Martha Keller witch song, which varies enormously in dynamic range
Mhm.
and volume. And the last note is a scream, basically. Full tank. And I realized halfway through, I'm concentrating. Got to do it right. We're recording.
Uh,
And I realized nobody is looking at me. They're all looking at the back of the room where Passavoy is in the booth with our techie who knows nothing about Filk. And Passavoy apparently leaned over and pushed the gain up just before the shriek. Everybody was waiting for the poor guy to yank his headphones off, which I gather he did. And I said, "That was a dirty trick to pull on him, Bob."
that was
I
mean.
I became aware somewhere along the line that not everybody could open up and just blast. And since I always could, it took me a while to learn, oh, dial it back, not much. Come on, pull back, pull back. And that one had an interesting duet. Leslie Fish loved one song with of Keller's that's about a devil, deal with the devil for a white dog. And the last note of that is a scream. Oh, she copied it and she wanted to duet with me. Well, I assumed, okay, she wants to take lead and I'll sing harmony. No, she sang harmony too. So you have two female voices rendering all the words flawlessly and both singing harmony. There's no lead. So, okay, that's an interesting recording. It's very limited. I think it's in the archive. I hope it's in the archive.
Cool. I want to hear that. It reminds me when Bill Roper was recording me for the first tape, Marcon 89. No, it would have been Marcon 90 because it was the same concert where I debuted Boy and His Frog. Just a few days after Henson passed. The he was up front and working on the sound. Okay. And he said something about testing levels and again doing a mic check, and I got this stupid grin on my face, and I grabbed the bit from the beginning of the Muppet movie where Dr. Bunsen Honeydew is going, "Sound is ready, give me a level." An animal looks around and goes, "Testing." Bill, knowing I was the son of a bitch, had the headphones ready to fly theatrically off of his head. So it was a great laugh right before we even started the concert. But
yeah, you learn to appreciate sound men tremendously.
Oh God, the Gary Larson cartoon about the sound man who's got the suck knob is not a lie.
But the really good ones,
Yeah.
because I did so little mic work. At OVFF, they'd want me to do something, and they'd have to, of course, mic the guitar because I'm not acoustic. I'm acoustic. And then I'd look back at Mark and say, "They want me to do that," and he said, "That's okay. I know how to do it." Okay, so he says, "I've heard you." So he wasn't going to commit the same headphone problem. So I noticed he doesn't wear headphones very much. Maybe he's. I hope not.
Yeah, that's what I say.
One of the Marcons, where we not only had Bill Maricello doing the ode to Hotel What's Its Name, but we also had Barry and Sally.
I was thinking the other big thing about Marcon 86 was the lobby Filk. We were supposed to be in the 6th floor of the back tower, and the air conditioning was out, and there was no way that we were. So we all tooled down to the lobby, and
down in the lobby where the desk is.
Yeah, absolutely. And several things came out of that. The most important thing that came out of that, as far as I know, was besides the fact that we all had a fantastic time. God, it was still to this day one of the best folks I've ever been at. 34 years later, was that the sense of community and the sense of growing and evolving was right there. Barry and Sally doing a much more rock and roll bent than most of the Filkers did at that time. And I felt right at home, and I started doing the same stuff, and it was all great. Oh, we had a blast. I did an early, not very well edited version of the Smurf and Safari. We had a huge game of You Can Sing Anything You Want to Alice's Restaurant. Murray Porath and Al Babcock did the I Was Not a Nazi Polka, which led to an apocryphal story. The apocryphal story is that in the middle of doing that, about 12:30 in the morning, a couple of weary travelers come into the lobby, and they see 50 people all sitting there going, "Sig Heil, Sig Heil, Sig Heil," and they all go, "Hey, they." And
in 1960, the Worldcon was in Pittsburgh, which was a seminal moment in a lot of ways, because we still weren't getting a room. Yeah. So you had Filkers all over the hotel after the Saturday ended. And the one I was in were with 3 people, Les Gerber and some, I don't remember who else. And the hostess in that room, who was the wife of an author, we sat over in a corner and filked a little bit, and the room gradually emptied of all the author's hanger-ons. And she came over when it was almost just about empty and gave us each a candy bar and said, "Thank you so much. We've been trying to go to bed for about 2 hours," and escorted us to the door. At which point we ran into a member of the con chair. And he said, the upper floor where we were holding all the program, we're done. If you guys want to go up there, it's got a piano.
Oh, there we go.
And apparently they spread the word through the whole hotel. So a menage, probably about 40 of us from both coasts and the Midwest, all went up there. And it was the first of what I knew where we all got together and traded wonderful stuff. I gave up at about 3:30. My hands are, I can't do it anymore. Some of them went to breakfast. And I thought, wonderful, now we have Filk. And then everybody went home. And we had to gradually put together again a little bit at a time until people like you and the Childs Heltons and all those other wonderful young Filkers.
I like to think I helped push Filk in a more dynamic direction, if only because we were starting to do stuff that was, Filk has always been about expressing your deep feelings about whatever it is that you're singing. Okay, it's like any other art form. It's like, here we go, and Barry and Sally and honestly, I think especially me, okay, worried a lot about what the audience reaction is. I remember early 90s. It must have been very early 90s, like 90 or 91. There was it was pretty sure it was Contraption, which is now defunct. Contraption out in Southfield, Michigan. And I went to the Filk room. There were 5 people, and I started singing and singing my stuff. Okay, my typical goofy stuff. Within about 45 minutes, we had 22 people in the room. All right, I had to leave. My grandmother was actually hanging out with me at the convention for a little bit, and we had to take her back home. And she lived over on the west side of Detroit, so it was about a half hour, 45 minutes round trip getting her back home. And then I made it back, and there were 5 people in the Filk room.
Well,
and I started singing. And after about 15, 20 minutes, there were 20.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I'm doing something right. I was trying to nail this down.
Well, they like what they hear and they start showing up.
Exactly. But there were so many people. It's like, I got a friend of mine typified it as saying, the left toenail of the dragon was wide and dark and sharp. and dude, 5 minutes of that, and then the right toenail of the dragon.
There was in the when the period started emerging where the rock and other elements started creeping in, some of the old fuddies, as I call them, in fandom,
absolutely.
Said, well, it's harmless because the ones that we know are doing Heinlein and they're doing Bradbury, etc. They're doing our stuff. But who are these? And they're playing proper instruments. Playing them properly. And I said, it's music, isn't it? What are you complaining about? And they did, a lot of them went away with sore noses, I'll put it that way. My attitude was, great. Now we got somebody who can really play and plays rock. And they're doing folky stuff. They're doing Filk.
Yeah.
So
Ookla
what's
coming
the
in,
problem?
Ookla coming in was another paradigm shift. The other year when we had Wreck the System at OVFF, the hip hop group.
You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, they were wonderful. They were freaking wonderful.
Yes,
and it's like,
I
think the thing that the fuddy-duddies forgot was the most obvious thing. It's like, okay, Heinlein and the Asimov and the Murray Leinster and all the rest of them, they were of their time. We are now of a new time, and that means there are new
You
artists.
can
The
do 'em
older
all.
ones, yeah, the older ones are still revered. That's not a problem, but we got more people bringing in more stuff.
The only problem is overabundance and not enough cons to showcase it all.
Absolutely. That's actually been one of the really, one of the good things of the whole pandemic is that there's been virtual conventions going on for the last 6 months, and everybody can tune in.
Well, not me, unfortunately. I
Well,
can
you're
hear
doing it now.
about it and wish you well. The old generation passing on to
Yeah, but I was going to say, huh?
all down through the history of Filk. Actually, I had a fanzine that was printed in the 30s that had a Filk in it. In a sense, it was, as usual in that period, all about space travel and we're going to the stars type of thing. All of us did it. I would like to be remembered for chess as much as I would anything, but I am going to be remembered for things like Mummy, et cetera, and other things that I've covered. My newest favorite of cover is cats. What does she call it? It's the cop being assigned to the weird scare.
Oh, yes.
Right. Oh, God. Yeah. Yes. Which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's a good closer. If you do a lot of performance, you learn like Rocket Ride.
Yeah.
Or in that case, right now, if I'm doing something, it's going to be Cat because again, it's a sing along.
Yeah.
Once got a request from, of all things, VoucherCon. And there's somebody put my name in, and I and Roberta Rogo, and I'm trying. What should I do for mystery fans? And I thought of cats. There's a detective being assigned, and they're singing along on the first chorus. Okay, that works. That works. Music is always. Are we about out of time?
15 minutes. No, we're not out of time. We got 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay. I'm counting on you to keep. I usually depend on the con chair runner sticking his head in the back of the door.
Well, that was effectively what that was.
Okay.
I gotta say, I think you could do just fine in this. Number one, you got this. I know that Em set it up, right? You were the one that Emily, you pushed all the buttons and got this thing running for her.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Roberta was in the Filk that we had last night. I was going to say, we're doing the history of Filk. Let's bring it all the way up to last freaking night. We had a constant level of between 24 and 27 people. There were like 5 or 6 people in the queue all night that I was there. I was supposed to host till midnight. I finally gave up around 11:15 because I was just dead after all the other stuff I'd done during the day. But it was fun. It was exciting. It was mostly a cappella. I mean, people didn't even have many guitars.
Well,
it was a matter of people being there. But it was great. And everybody just stepping up and having a good time. We had Cecilia Eng. We had Roberta. We had Maureen O'Brien showed up. I hadn't seen her in a few years.
Yes.
Just lots of people, new people coming in. It was great. And that's the way that a lot of the Filks have been online the last several months. It's you push a couple buttons to get in and do it.
Well, there are have always been until and what became Filk from the start. People who say it's new, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And they may not be of our they're not doing proper nobody has training. Well, some of them do. And we've had a few that really had a lot of training. And that's country. Why are they doing country? That's rock. Now, I will admit, my hearing is not what it used to be, and it's not due to my voice, it's due to age. I cannot comprehend a lot of the words in rap. So most of it, I love the rhythm. I love the energy. So I really, really, really liked Rexy. But I have no idea what they were singing about.
I
And
got that.
that's okay. That's part of Filk.
I
There
have
are
to
a
use
lot.
subtitles watching a lot of stuff. Okay.
There are
Fortunately,
a lot of films
Hamilton is
that are
extensively.
referencing a movie or a book or a fantasy
Yeah.
that I don't know, but I like the song,
Uh-huh.
and that's what counts.
Yep.
It's a love of music.
That was one of the first things that I had to deal with when I was doing stuff, based on works that people weren't necessarily familiar with, or using songs for parodies that people weren't necessarily familiar with. It's like, having to explain those, like, okay, here, to make sure you get the joke, this is the song that I'm doing, and what, and sometimes it's easier than others, but most of the time these days there's such a ubiquity of pop culture just seeping into the cracks that people at least have a chance of picking up stuff. And if the song is entertaining enough by itself, then you're all right. And then they go back and they get that, and they get more of the jokes, and that's great.
They just don't want to be caught enjoying it.
Well, that's again, that's their freaking. It's funny you're saying this, and I'm thinking conservative versus liberal, because that's what it's. It's like, oh, we don't. We need to be gatekeepers. We need to tell you what is approved, and it's like, no, everybody's welcome. Everybody sings. Everybody of any talent level. If you don't have the talent, how are you going to get the talent unless you practice?
We had a wonderful experience of the Clash when Steve Simmons and Paula Smith said, if we got up the money for you to go to the British World Cup, would you guys go? And we thought, you crazy kids, you're not gonna. And they did.
And they did.
So we had to go, and I met a few of the. Yeah, there weren't too many Filkers that I knew, but there were some.
Uh-huh.
And we found an empty hallway. So we're sitting there and we're enjoying ourselves. There are about 5 or 6 of us. And finally, the square men in the square brown suit, so they're just the same over there, came by and said, you have to move. And one of them was a female engineer in Silicon Valley. She was not going to move, and I thought, we're all going to end up in Reading jail. And the guys finally said, well, you see, all the rooms are empty, but behind that wall that you've been leaning against, there is a gambling establishment. I gather off limits type thing, and they can hear you, and you're disturbing the high rollers. And about that time, Larry Niven showed up and said, well, we finished the Regency dance. That's available. So we went there. And earlier I had watched CJ get her Hugo. And she had apparently tried to go to a party being held for what was going to be her future publishers in Britain. And they wouldn't let her in because she was obviously some guy's fancy woman. So she came down.
And so they weren't her publisher.
She came down and joined us and did some of her songs. And we all got to pass around the Hugo, and she was looking lovely and a Grecian gal. And then some Scots came in. And they said, what is this? And we said, this is called Filking. And they said, well, that guy in the bar at the piano, he said that was Filking. And we almost killed him. Because it was Filthy Pierre. And he insisted on doing God Save the Queen, all of the verses, including the ones about rebellious Scots. And the Scots came in and said, oh, this is different. And they started doing a lot of original Scots folk. Well, we considered ourselves great collectors of all kinds of folk music.
Oh, yeah.
And he kept saying, join in. And I said, I've never heard this one. This is wonderful. I never heard it before. But
somebody got a recorder going. My God.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was also where I first heard Shieldwall.
Uh-huh.
And the kid who did it had been awake for 22 hours. They drove down from northern England.
So he was a little punchy.
So he did it at
Mm,
uh,
uh.
and I kept, so
That,
this,
that I think was the thing that I encouraged more than anything else getting into Filk, same with Barry and Sally and a couple other people. It's like, pick up the freaking tempo.
well,
So many
particularly for
people,
that song, since the first word
yeah,
of every verse is hasten.
yes. it, it,
Yeah,
it, it, when you do a song at a dirge, everybody's going to fall asleep, and that's, that's not what people want to listen to. If you want to share your dreams and your hopes and your cool stories and everything, do them at a pace that people can actually accept them, rather than something that will lull them into a coma.
well, this whole recording thing was a learning experience for everybody, I think.
Mhm.
79 was our, that, and then 80, Bijo said, I want a West Coast Filk. So she said, come out here. We're going to record everything.
Mhm.
Well, whoever recorded it got a lot of blank tape, apparently. But we sat in a circle, and Terry Lee was recording on a very small thing, which turned out to be the only recordings we got.
Mhm.
And it was a learning experience for a lot of us. And I thought, I have learned Shield Wall, and I'm going to do it. And it's the only thing I need all my lungs for, because I do it flat and fast. And I stood, and the guy with the stand mics moved it closer. And I said, I don't think you want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
And Gary Anderson, who had been at London, said, no, you don't want to do that. But we won't be able to pick it up. And I said, I think you will. Back it off. And he did, and I did. And before I was done, the whole room is doing what they called a skull beat. They're
Okay.
we're all going to go out and kill the first car we see.
Right.
I thought, what have I done? But it's so much fun. I mean,
It is. It is. I
you got to
I have.
get over
I,
ourselves and enjoy.
Yep, absolutely. No, I've had so much fun. When they have the Celtic jams, even if I'm not playing along, even if I'm just sitting there sucking it in, it's like, okay, 5 minutes left, got that.
Just keeping
You
track.
know, there have been so many wonderful filks, that the best ones tend to be the ones where everybody joins in on something, and it keeps going for like 5 or 6 or 7 songs. We get everybody just rocking the building. And the solo performers, yep, that's all great, that's good. But when a chaos filk gets going and everybody is on the same vibe, and we all want to just keep pushing the energy, it's like, okay, let's bring out some more loud fast Stan Rogers, let's bring out some rock and roll, let's do this. Yet several years ago at OVFF, we had the rock and roll filk, which I really wish that we would do again, because that was glorious. We set aside 2 hours and said, okay, rock and roll covers. We did half the soundtrack of the Rocky Horror Show. We did Eagles, we did Steve Miller Band, we did Moody Blues, we did every damn thing. The only thing we didn't do was Thunderstruck, and I think somebody was thinking about that by the end of it. But it's like, saying rock and raucous, and not trying to be a pun about it, but it was joyful. It was so much fun. There was the other time, the first time that most of us heard Frank Hayes when I was a boy. Steve McDonald did it. That was in 1999 OVFF, and the room was flattened. We were all laughing so freaking hard.
I was at the creation. Frank introduced that at a little DuckCon, I think. And he was a guest, and he said, everybody got to write a computer song. Well, I don't like computers, so he started that, and Stevie Mac was at the opposite side of the room. He dropped to his hands and knees and crawled across and sat adoringly at feet throughout the entire. And the rest is history, I think. It's been parodied, which I wouldn't have thought possible after the original version.
Yeah.
But
I love getting that reaction. What's that?
You had darkness?
Yeah. those was lucky enough to have darkness.
Yeah, Frank wrote the gem there.
I love getting that reaction out of our friends. You know, that's the other thing, because we are all a chosen family of Filk. Getting, you know, really nailing somebody with something is wonderful. A few years ago, I was guest out at Conflict out in Pacific Northwest, and Alexander James Adams had not heard "Smash the Frickin' Fairies." And I wish to God somebody had a video, because he was flopped over several chairs, you know, unable to breathe. He was turning purple. He was laughing so hard.
I've seen it many
And it's
times.
like my work here is done. And the first time that I did Undead Happy Trees in front of it was a Dead Dog at OVFF several years ago with Shauna McGuire and Randy Hoffman in particular, were just like gaping at me.
Good stuff.
Yeah, but it's fun when Ookla first did, and I think it was at Fusion. I think it was at Confusion. Yes, we know 1 minute left. Okay, fine. We'll wrap up in just a second. Ookla came out and they did Das Ubertuber. You know, Mr. Potato Head, master of this. And the entire place just fell apart. We were gone. That was the beginning of their set, and we were like, they had us. It was wonderful. So the history of Filk is rich and wonderful, and Juanita's been there for most of it, and I've been there for a decent hunk, and we all have a lot of fun. Anything else to add, Juanita?
Keep Filking.
Whoever's out there in the auditorium watching this, thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Enjoy the rest of the convention. We're going to be having more fun. I've got a concert at 7, etc. Juanita Coulson, Emily Coulson, thank you. Emily Coulson Vasquez. I'll get the name right. Emily Coulson and Juanita, thank you so much. Everybody watching, thank you so much. Take it easy.